happening in New York or across the globe. Learn why it matters first on Kevin McCullough Radio.
So glad you're with us. Thank you for being here. Breaking news as it happens, what it means, why it matters. Of course, the top story, the president and Vladimir got together and had a chat, and people are not happy about it, as we've been discussing here on the broadcast. You've heard from reactions, but all you have to do is turn on the cable news channels, and you just see some Republicans and every Democrat and a lot of the media saying what happened here. Did it have any impact on the markets? That's the focus of our next discussion, and to join us for that is the CEO of Landmark Capital, who I have to admit, if you were watching Newsmax television a week ago Sunday, if you were flipping the channels, you might have seen his face right there on the Income Generation TV show. And nice job there talking about the economy at large. But David Fischer, it's good to have you back on Kevin McCullough Radio. And I was thankful that David Scranton gave my show a little shout out there on his show, saying you appear here every week. And I was very honored. Thanks for including me.
Well, thank you for having me. You got big shoes to fill, and I'm glad I was able to do it. Maybe not as eloquent as you, but think it's kind of in my power alley. What we talked about tariffs, and kind of to piggyback what you were saying, the markets aren't really moving up or down because no lack of confidence was brought to the market, and no confidence was brought. But there are some underlying things that are happening between Russia and the United States that I think is important that are not being talked about, but it's being overshadowed by this meeting. I think that's critical, especially when it comes to our currency.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that a little bit. It is the top story of the day, Russia, U.S. What are those underlying factors that we need to be aware of here in the United States?
Well, Friday, the Department of Treasury came out in a look-back report and said that Russia had a major sell-off of U.S. Treasury bonds. Half of their Treasury holdings Russia sold back in March. And as a result of that, it showed its head in early April. They sold $47.4 billion to be specific, according to the stats. That is actually what the Treasury is saying caused the 10-year yield to go above 3%. It wasn't anything else. CNBC and other market news commentators on financial news were saying it's because of other things, tariffs. This had to do with Russia selling. An interesting fact also is China's been selling some of these. In the same period of time, they sold not a lot, $7 billion of the assets in March, and also April, the same amount. But another thing that's kind of happening between Russia and the United States is behind the scenes, is Russia's been making agreements with Iran in their oil, $50 billion.
Yeah.
There was a big meeting between the senior advisor of Iran and President Vladimir Putin, and they reaffirmed their commitment to work together. The two energy giants out of Russia, Rosneft and Gazprom, have already started talks with the Ministry of Iran and signed potential deals worth of $10 billion, just those two oil-producing companies alone.
So it's a complete shock, then, that Vladimir Putin would say in that news conference today that Iran's getting a raw deal here. They need to be cut some slack.
What we see in an agreement between two presidents, leaders of the world, who hold 90% of the nuclear arsenals is one thing, and what happens behind the scenes and when it comes to money, the Treasury bills and oil is a whole other thing.
No doubt. Well, let's talk about that $50 billion in T-bills. And you've talked about it before, but you said that if the T-bill gets above the 3%, that's really a concern, economic concern for U.S. consumers.
Well, yes, it is, because it's kind of like the psychological barrier. It's back down since then. Today it's at 2.85%. But what has happened in the midst of this since then and now is that the 2-year yield has gone up. So the gap between the 2 and the 10 has gotten a lot smaller, which is another thing we watch. And a lot of people, economists, are saying this thing is going to invert, which means the shorter-term yield of a 2-year is going to get higher in value than a 10-year. So if that happens, 9 times out of 10, that's recession.
Well, and we don't want that to happen, so we need to keep watching that carefully, as I know David will. Looking past Russia, China is still sitting there. Are we in a trade war with them yet?
We are officially in a trade war. There was $34 billion that were put into place in tariffs last week. The president is talking about another $200 billion over the weekend. All Bloomberg News and other financial news had talking heads across the board saying, where we're at. Some very well-respected people like Scott Minard said this, that the hail of risk is getting fatter and fatter as we go along. So far, the Chinese have shown no interest in backing down, and neither has Donald Trump. Another person, Jim Milstein, says it seems like a perfect storm, creating conditions where recession is very likely, and the increases of incidents of defaults and delinquencies are much higher. So we're headed towards everything I've been saying now. The analysts are saying these things. We're not there yet. No need to sound the alarm, but we've gotten closer to the panic button.
Well, that's disturbing. And, friends, one of the reasons why I love having David on is because he offers you materials that will help you stay informed as these events come to pass. In fact, his newest newsletter is titled Some Use Their Crystal Ball, I Just See the Obvious, and it talks about his 8 previous predictions that have come to pass, and he also gives a couple of future ones that he's making as well, and you could see this for yourself. Just call 844-604-2575 and request the newest newsletter. You can also get the 2018 white paper. It's the new one, Time is Up, Which Bubble Will Burst First to Trigger the Great Coming Deflate. It's all about what will happen when those bubbles begin to pop and how the economy reacts to it. And it's all got stuff that you need to know. And he's still making the Financial Survival Guide free. It's nearly $200 worth of value in product, but he's still making it available for free if you just call and request it. 844-604-2575. 844-604-2575. You can also go online at landmarkgold.com. David Fischer, always appreciate your insight. Thanks for giving us your thoughts today.
Absolutely, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
And keep looking good on TV. It's Kevin McCullough Radio coming back with the final thought for the day. It's I'm not going anywhere. You shouldn't either. Stay with us.